Let's get the dialogue up.
George Lucas.
So let me bring the volume down so it doesn't overload.
George Lucas once said, "Deeply ingrained in our reality is our
Right, so this is the
relationship to our
demo
parents and
voiceover by one of the
kids.
filmmakers.
That's where the real
It's not
stories always end up."
James Earl Jones.
His story began in an idyllic American way. Born in Modesto, California to Dorothy and George Sr., George Jr. was free to unleash his busy imagination. He immersed himself in comic books, shared adventures with Flash Gordon, and watched radio serials in his mind's eye.
Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men?
And though he devoured novels like Treasure Island, Robinson Crusoe, and The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn, school was a disconnect.
I was a consummate underachiever. I hated school. I loved to build things. I loved working on cars and engines. And all I wanted to do was race cars.
Just days before high school graduation, George was broadsided by a classmate traveling 90 miles per hour. He was found unconscious with no trace of a pulse. The long period of convalescence had a life-changing effect on George. He decided to trade cars for college. And rather than take over the family office supply business, he would enroll at USC's School of Cinematic Arts. "There will be no artists in this family," his father told him. "That's no way to make a living." George's first student film was an avant-garde sensation. With it, he won first prize in 47 film festivals and a coveted internship that led him to his mentor.
It came from reading comic books.
They taught and challenged each other in every way. And in 1971, with Francis Ford Coppola producing, George directed his first feature film. THX 1138 was a disquieting look at the future set in the 25th century. It was our first glimpse of George's desire to reject the status quo.
My first impression was, I hate you. I hate that guy, man. He's so much better than I am.
George followed up his exploration of the future with a trip to the past.
American Graffiti.
His past.
Where were you in '62?
He inhabited every character in the film and defied studio brass by intercutting four seemingly unrelated stories, making them work as one, and using popular music instead of a traditional score. American Graffiti was a massive success, propelling George and Lucasfilm into the stratosphere.
What if you came up higher?
It was just his third feature film, and it changed everything. The way movies are made,
Real.
the way we watch them, the way they make us feel.
To the world-famous Chinese theater come the stars of the biggest box office success in motion picture history.
No film before or since has had a greater cultural influence.
Put that down. Cigarettes are dangerous.
It transcended the zeitgeist and became part of the American experience.
Well, I'd say cut.
With Star Wars behind him, George bucked the system again.
Hi, Daddy.
I think the biggest thing on earth.
He retired from directing for 15 years to raise his children as a single parent.
That's Daddy putting on a Snoopy ornament.
Good morning, Katie.
Hey, Dad.
As his children grew, so did his empire and his ability to give back. Pledging half his fortune to charity, he is one of the most prolific philanthropists in the world, having created the George Lucas Education Foundation, Edutopia, and the upcoming Lucas Museum of Narrative Art. George once said, "Don't listen to your peers. Don't listen to your parents. Don't listen to your culture. Only listen to yourself. That's where you're going to find your truth."
Okay, so obviously the dialogue wasn't mixed in properly with it, and that's not the final voiceover. And then they had to, once this got approved, they had to get all these watermarks and bitsy time code things off of the film. Right, we just watched it. Right, thank you, Matthew. Give me 1 second. Okay, so let's make the film really small and put it here, and then I'm going to mute the voiceover for now, and we're going to go back to the beginning, and let's do this. Let's get really big. So I did this 10 years ago, you know, it'll be 10 years in November, and my mixing technique has evolved since then. So there are some things that I don't do here that I do now, but the organizational skills and compositional skills are still there. So if we get closer in here, we see that I've got winds, like a score, brass, women, tenors, pitched percussion, like percussion, keyboards, or pitched percussion like marimba and harp, drums, like snare drum, timpani, and bass drum, and then all my strings. So it's score-like because I've got wind ensembles like right here. This is right. Let me actually. That's an ensemble patch. And then I've got here, right, all of my markers. And like, so Charlie, I got, since you took film scoring, these were from a spotting session. Like Buck the System again. That was a note directly from the director. Directly directed by one of the directors, because there's two of them. Yeah. Okay, so let's break this down section by section. I'll play it section and then we'll go over it. Right, so that's the first little bit, and then there's the Flash Gordon music that comes in after that. So this is childhood. I wanted something that sounded innocent and like dreamlike a little bit, you know, and playful, but not sappy and too happy. So, whoops. Okay, so let's make this bigger. So I'm going to solo the strings, and we can just listen to the strings at the beginning. See, I don't even have VCA masters or any of that stuff in here. This is before I started using them. Right. So you'll notice I'm just playing the strings there, and that all works as a piece of music. It's not full or hugely orchestrated, but it all sounds good. One thing I want to show you here is when we get to this section right here. Let me make that bigger. And I'm just going to, if you listen to here, the sound of these strings, the sound of these strings, and the sound of these strings, right? So it goes back and forth. So there's this, So these are low in the sort of in the mid range. These are higher up, and these come back down to the mid range. So it's sort of like like the first one says something, answered by a second one, and then finished by the third, by a repeat of the first one. And I do that with pitch registers. So some are in the mid range. I don't want to, get too technical with music theory things, but some of them, one of them is in the mid range. I answer with a higher pitched voice and then back down to the mid range. So it's like a man and a woman having a conversation, right? So there's that. And then also on these strings here, I have very little vibrato on them, which I can control with the more expensive libraries. Beat up. Right. And then right here, these strings are going up. Do, 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 do. Oh, really? Really, Charlie? Oh, so when Marcus graduated from music and arts, you were coming. I see. Right, because he went there before Queens College. He didn't finish Queens College. He ended up being way too busy to finish. Like, he was playing Saturday Night Live and being on the road with Luther Vandross and Roberta Flack and doing studio dates while he was in college. And then this goes down. So this is going up, and then the counter line is going down. And so there's another thing that goes on here, but let's go back and now let's listen to the piano, the pitched percussion, and this. Let's see. I think that's good. So that's these purple tracks here. Right, so I have this sound here, which is a piano kind of sound. Right, it's got piano and bells. And I've got that panned mostly to the left. And that's doubled with an acoustic piano. Dark, right, and panned more to the right. And then the two of them together, right? So it creates a composite sound. So this has elements that are very bright. It's up an octave, and that this is down an octave, and it's EQ'd very darkly. And with this one, you hear the boom, dit, doom, dit, boom, dit, doom, dit, louder than on the top one. Like when we get to this section. Like you don't hear the left hand at all right here, but you do hear the left hand in this one here. Doom, dit, doom, dit. Right, so you divide out the chores of that composite. And then that gets supplemented with this harp right here. Right, and so, the harp fits in nicely with the acoustic piano. And then they're doubling that line here. And it also fits in nicely with this keyboard. And if I add the strings, that'll sound nice too. So this is something that is really important, even if you're doing that wild kind of ambient stuff that we were doing last semester and earlier this semester. And, you know, in music, is that when you listen to different parts together, they should sound good. Sometimes they're going to be in conflict with each other, but that's a choice. But in music like this, they need to be complementary, where they all the different possible combinations sound good together. That's a really important thing about orchestration for this kind of music. Right, so there's another harp here. Oh, wait, no, that's the harp. Okay, so let's move up. So we've got all this percussion here. Right, and then there's also the Glock. And let's play that with the piano. Let's play that with the harp. Play that with the omni keys. See that? Do-da-dee. The celeste is playing the Glock is playing a harmony part to that. And now it's working with the harp, the Glock. Then there's some choir stuff that starts these blue tracks here. Let's solo all of them. Let me actually turn the musician sound on. So if you're listening to earbuds, right now you're going to hear with this track here, the sound is, I printed an effect, and it goes back and forth in the, right? So I've got a panning echo on that. So that's, I like that. And then this starts, and then it gets finished with this. So in other words, this track here just does simply right? And so that lead, that gives you a nice beginning that gets finished off by this top track. See that? How that works beautifully? And then there's little touches, like I've got right here, finger cymbals that work, the little ching, ching kind of things. And then there are these other cymbals. No, those are more choirs. I've got this mislabeled. Give me an F. Okay, and then a little further on, I'll let the Glock, it's right, we've got a change from women to men, to tenors. And that right there, this sound here, is complementary with these strings. Right, they fill out the low end a little bit, and notice I leave it the voice blank when it gets to this track here. So it's just. So that I like that. And then we've got some brass, solo trumpet, and a solo horn. And then we'll play the winds. So we got oboe, solo flute, and ensemble winds. Now, this is another thing that I think is an important part of orchestration and building and constructing a piece. So these are all short little melodic fragments, and they're being passed around all the different food groups in the brass and wind. And you can hear that the melody gets played, but the color is constantly changing. There was a technique that Schoenberg started called Klangfarben melody, where every pitch of a melody was played by a different instrument. I don't think that works really well personally, but you can take that concept and adapt it for your own work, right? So that's sort of where I got this idea for this. And also from playing Broadway shows for so many years, this happens all the time in orchestrations. So and the flute just comes in on the top note here, right, that the French horn is playing. So now let's play that with the piano and the harp and the omni keys. And then that whole bit, everybody at the same time. And then you have the Flash Gordon music. And then, so now this is afterwards, right? He's growing up and he's interested in books and it's energetic, right? But you got to keep things in proportion because there's dialogue. So let's listen to the next bit and then we'll break it down. Okay, so we'll go up to that point there. So we start off with these spiky strings with sort of like a, I don't know, Aaron Copland, speaking of Aaron Copland's School of Music, kind of a feel to this, like something you'd find in Hoedown or parts of Appalachian Spring. Right, so we got these strings here playing this little melody. Right, and listen to the accents and articulations, right? Remember I talked about that in Audio MIDI 1, drawing all those things in and make sure they make a difference. I mean, there was no time and no budget for this to go hire a real orchestra to play this. I wish that was the case, but these are techniques that you can employ to make anything you do, no matter what style it is, sound better. Articulations, note durations, accents. And then there are these low strings are playing some fifths, like power chords on a guitar. Right? Change articulations from those to pizzicato, which is where you use your fingers on the strings of the cellos and basses. And then these violins then become these sustained notes here. Whoops, that was rhythmically incorrect right there. And then you've got that. Okay, so variation. So this figure here, right, is also here. It starts out a cappella by itself, and then when the spiky strings come in, then when it comes in the second time, the spiky strings come in right on the downbeat. I changed the articulation there, and the strings change. So let's go and let's look at some other food groups. Right, so there's a piano part, and then there's oh, right, so the two piano parts. So we'll listen to these, and we'll listen to the bass and these tracks here. Yeah, so these are xylophones. So you see how I'm helping out those strings punch through by adding those really sharp attacks on the low part of the piano and not playing right hand stuff. These are also orchestrational tips. Let's add our women back in here. Do-da-do-da-beep. And then there's an oboe right here. And then I change articulations to this ensemble patch on the top there. Right, boop up, boop, bop, right? Boop up, boop, bop, right? So in other words, this line up on the top is playing. And then the accents, I have an accent on the oboe here. And then a second accent on the flute. Right? It's just the color. You just, you have so much freedom. You can do this with electronic sounds, with any kind of music you write. The principles of orchestration all work together. So like if I just play the Glock, the bells. So the bells are not going do da do dee da do dee da do da do dee da do da. They're just going bop, 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 right? They're just accenting a few notes. They're going da 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 da. They're 3/8 notes, 3/8 notes, and 2/8 notes. Bop, 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 bop. And then the xylophone fills that in. And then that fits in with the piano. And I've got a second piano doubling those right there. Right, and there's more business up here, but you can see how that all, when the second time this comes through, and the brass, the low brass is giving me that bump, bump. Space. Doesn't have to play the whole figure, right? That's, it just makes, I don't know, it just, for me, it's so much more interesting. And then the bell's coming right at the end there. That's a marimba, actually. That's not a xylophone. All right, so let's listen to that bit again with everybody. So, storytelling, right? We're here, this is a section, this is another section, and then the first section repeats. When the first section repeats, the orchestration is transformed. It's fuller, it's bigger, right? It's like they start off with a little kernel of an idea, and then it'll grow into something bigger. It's like if you're watching a Broadway show or a musical, you know, that could start off with just a few people and then more and more people join in, right? It's all like all this stuff is related together. So just pay attention to how that works. Just strings. Now, second strings. Contrasting section. Fuller. First section comes back in. Fuller. Right, and at the end here, right, see how, again, passing things around, and then I've got these low winds on this track here. Right, they only play at the very end there. So, you know, this is like a lesson in orchestration that can apply to your work as well, no matter what style you're doing. Now he's going to get into a car crash, right? And so that's bad. So the music gets a little bit more intense, a little darker. It's not really ominous, but you know, you got to realize proportion, right? You don't want this to be, oh, so dramatic, right? It's just hints at it. So let's listen to this next bit and then we'll break it down. Okay, and then we'll go, it's there. Okay, so we'll go from the, so we'll go from the bottom instruments up. So we go from that using the bow, that to using the fingers on the right hand to pluck. And then there are those sustained strings. So it's just a pedal point. Like, in other words, it's those, whatever note those are, it's just hovering around that, and then the chords change above it. And And so now at this point where it gets darker, right, I want to introduce things to help that. So I've got some of the lower pitched drums, which I haven't had yet. So there's a quiet timpani right here. Again. Okay, so, right, and then there's bass drum here and here. Quiet, soft. And then there's a snare drum in between. Just playing a couple of notes. Right? So the figure is bump, bump, ticka-dum, boom. Bump, bump, ticka-dum, boom. So how do you orchestrate that? Bump, bump in the timpani, ticka-dum in the snare, and then boom in the bass drum. Right? So that's how I did that. I sang a rhythm as this was playing along, and then I orchestrated it. Let me get this so that I'm not blocking it. Okay, so now that's those guys, and then the harp does, a nice pattern here. And then the piano comes in right here. Piano right here. Right, so again, the piano here, it's in the meaty part of the piano, then these punchy, and then using the higher part of the piano. See how the piano has different sounds? Very different sounds. It's almost like 3 different instruments there from one piano. And every instrument does that depending upon the dynamics, depending upon the pitch register. In other words, the pitch register is it low, middle, or high, So, so you can hear it. The piano in the midsection with the sustain pedal down. Then punchy coming up. Short, crisp. And then here, very high-pitched, quiet. And that really works beautifully with the harp, I think. And then there's these marimbas here. Right, just playing a couple of little chord notes. And it just all locks together. If I go just to the piano part, 2, 3, 4. And then if we add our drums in, see, just all fits together like a jigsaw puzzle. And now if I take the piano and the harp out, you can hear how the marimba really works with the drums. All right, and then there's some bells over here too that probably double the piano part. Right, not the entire part though. Bop beep boop bop bop. Bop bop boop bop bop. Bop, 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 bop. Bop, 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 bop. And then there's a couple of low brass hits. Space. Beat it. Where are I? Excuse me. Here we are. And then we've got all our winds here. And then the horns. And low brass. Right. So let's listen to that whole thing with everybody together. And right here, I just play around with the time a little bit. Right, so I have a figure of 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. So it goes for 6 beats, right? And then we finish out the phrase. So I like to play around with things like that. So I'm superimposing 3 in the time of 4, but keeping the 8th note just by accenting and grouping notes together, not by doing polyrhythms. So in other words, if I was doing this, bop, 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 that's a polyrhythm where I'm clapping 2 and singing 3 in the same time. Bop, 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 right? Right, that's a polyrhythm. But here I'm going bop, 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 bop. So the pulse is staying the same, and I'm grouping 8th notes into groups of 3 instead of what's typically groups of 2 or 4. And so that works out. That's a nice effect, I think. And then right here, I do something where these short strings, they don't come in on the downbeat. So let's see. Let me see if I go start back here. 1. Ba do do da, ba do da da, ba do do da, ba do ba da. Right where ba boo boo ba, boo ba do ba. 1 2 2 2 2. 1 da da da. Right. So the first measure, it's a 4-bar phrase. The first measure starts on da da on the second 8th note of the beat. The second measure starts on the downbeat, and then I repeat that. And just leaving that downbeat free really changes the feel of what's going on. It's really amazing. It's something that you get from reggae, that I learned from reggae, believe it or not. 4 1 1. Yeah. So we're just going to the next section. Right, so this is before American Graffiti. So we've got, again, these spiky things. Beep, beep, boom. Right, so stroke, 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 slap, slap. So snap, you're snapping. It's Bartok pizzicatos. So that's kind of cool. And then there's these strings that go above that. Deet dat doot deet dat dat. Dit, 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 dit. And then so then there's some timpani with right after that. And you can hear how I'm accenting things, certain notes in that violin passage. And then there's these marimbas that come in and help with that. So let's just solo out those marimbas. And then there's xylophones on this green track. See how that drives it subtly? And then let's look at these other pitched instruments. And then there's some finger cymbals. So these are the green tracks. So that's kind of nice. Boop bop boop bop boop 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 in the bells, and then the big chimes do this note, and then the finger cymbals end right here. So again, making sort of like a composite phrase of different instruments combining together, right? It makes nice colors, even if they're bellish instruments. And that fits in with the right, so it's a nice counterpoint to that. So the winds start off with this. And then I double that bell line, I believe, with these flutes right here. Yeah. So if I mute these. So it just, you know, I love writing like this and working like this. It's so pleasing to me. It's fun to do. Low. And then there's some brass that also play there with the winds. And then brass, solo trumpet, and solo horn. Right, so you see how much space there are with the different instrument groups here. They're not all playing at the same time. So let's put these bells, chimes, and finger cymbals, xylophones, and marimbas. And then there's a couple of timpani hits in there. Crash cymbal. Okay, so let's listen to all of that together now. Now, one other thing about that is I've got that really fun that's sort of like a rhythmic melody that sort of drives this forward. But then you've got these longer phrases in the trumpet and French horn. That space. And the second time through, I'm sorry, you hear the horn double an octave lower. So that every time, even if the notes repeat, the orchestration is changed, right? It's the constant development and transformation of your ideas. And let's listen to the next bit. Whoops. So this is a variation on something that came earlier. Right, this is earlier in the piece. Right, so this next bit is of bringing something back in, but change the orchestration a little bit. So now we're talking about that THX film, which is science, futuristic and dramatic. Okay, so let's break that down a little bit. So we've got these low winds and middle brass and low brass. Really dissonant chords for this. Right, so let's, and then as that's going on, right, in this area here, you'll hear the winds start to play some of the melodic content, the low winds. Yeah, let's just solo that out. And then we'll add the oboe and the flutes, and you'll hear how that also gets played around a little bit. Right? And then you'll hear also, I punch that out a little bit. All the meanwhile, we've got these short strings going on. Right? Just like, you know, that is something that I do. I've done this a couple of times with you guys where right? I studied tablas for a little while and they sing their rhythms, you know, da din din dan tickadiddy dan tickadan, that kind of with those syllables. And so that sort of influenced me a little bit when I want to come up with a rhythmic figure, right? Sing that rhythm and then find the notes that fit in. Yeah. So let's do this though. So we start this line here. Right, we got strings.
We'll see the screen. We can't see.
Oh, shoot. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Kimberly. right? So then when we've got the line going up, as the line ascends, we can hear the right, bump, bump, bump. Every phrase, dum, 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 ticka, dum, dum, dum. I change the orchestration changes, right, and it just instead of it being this like stupid scale that ascends, diminished scale that ascends, it actually has more interest because it's the colors are changing. Right, and then we just have these sustained. And now we're changing here. Just a nice little ending to lead us into the American Graffiti at the hop, doody-dee-lop. So one more time, that little bit. And I also timed that out so that when the guy gets all the way to the top looking up, that's when it hits. Yeah, fun. Okay, so now the next bit is over here. It's Star Wars. That's variation of the very opening. Right? Bring that back in. Just change it a little bit. New idea? You know, that's supposed to sound a little bit like John Williams, right? And it does without stealing. Just that big brash style. So I've got this figure in the high winds, and then the flutes add a little bit of taste in this spot. So we'll just listen to the winds. Oh, there's piccolo too. Okay, so just listen to the winds. So that's an ensemble patch. Right, so here, bop, 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 bop. Then they stop. Right, so the big sound here is like a lot of people playing the melody, a lot of people playing the bass line. It's like the big full orchestration. And then so let's stop that and let's listen to our brass. So we've got this really a punchy French horn thing that happens here. Right? So that's fun. And then let's listen to these chimey things. and the harp and the marimba. So we'll listen to these. See all the space? They just emphasize a few different notes here and there just to add some color. Now, see all the space here? And then they're going to come in right here. Nice harp gliss. Now, this is, a tip. Xylophones can help punch through something that's in a big, thick orchestration, just like piccolos can cut through as well. So we'll keep those, and we will add our percussion, the snare, the timpani, and the bass drum. And all this space here, and then timpani roll. And then our strings. And it's cool. I like this because the winds start off by themselves playing that figure. Right? And then the strings will come in here for the second time through. Right here. And that whole bit again, and I'll take it out, and yeah. Well, right from when the strings come in. And now back to a variation on some of that childhood music at the beginning, because he's talking about his kids. And then leading into his empire. The music's ascending. Boom. And now, like, the peaceful ending, proud of a life well lived, even though he's still with us. Choir ending there. Nice peaceful chord. All right. So I wrote this. I didn't write a note on paper. I did all this in my head, into Pro Tools as MIDI, like I taught you guys, and then just work with everything. That's pretty much how everybody works that does film these days. Notation is useful, and some guys use notation to jot down ideas and stuff, but everything is sequenced like this. You could see how much detail and attention to detail I put into the work. And like some of the orchestrational techniques that I use, where there was that one spot where the timpani played a note, then a couple snare drum notes, and then the kick, then the bass drum. or where there was a melodic fragment played in this instrument, then it was answered in this instrument, and then another instrument came in and picked it up, and then there were 2 or 3 instruments playing the last part of it, right? This is like orchestration. It helps you tell your story, just playing like one instrument for, to play from the beginning to the end. There is music that does that, and it's effective, but I find that when you're doing this kind of work, understanding how to create those kinds of orchestrations is very helpful. And hopefully you can take some of these principles and employ them on your final project. Not to write orchestral music, but orchestration and storytelling, it's all the same no matter what the musical language is, or what the medium is. The principles remain the same. A great jazz big band chart has the same principles as this, right? A great pop, like a Frank Sinatra arrangement, has the same principles as this. A great pop song, like if we listen to any of any great pop song, has concepts similar to this within the language that they're working with. Okay, so that was a nice amount of stuff today. Concept talking and everything, and some technical stuff here at the end. So, anybody have any questions? I think your next draft is due next week. Is that correct? So I'll hear some music, hopefully. And, yeah.
Professor.
Yes, Samantha.
Quick question. I've been having, I'm not able to import my video into Pro Tools.
Really?
Yeah. I think it might be because I have Artist, Pro Tools Artist.
Yeah, that's a problem with Pro Tools Artist. Okay. So here's what you'll do. Shamaya Barber had a problem with this last year. And so there are 2 solutions. One is to go to the lab, and the first row has Pro Tools Studio. You can work there. But if you can't do that, what you'll do is you'll watch. Hold on a second, Kimberly. Watch the film with your click track, right? And you'll have to count beats and measures and take little notes as to when things happen in what measure, right? So let's say, like your first 8 beats is one scene. So you put a marker in what that is, and then let's say on the 3rd measure you change something, you'll put a marker there, and you'll write like spotting notes to tell you where to move things. That's what I had her do. And then you wrote to your markers, and then I'll marry it together when you hand in your draft, and I'll send that back to you so you can see how it looks with the film.
Okay, thank you.
That's actually the way that old time Hollywood people used to work, right? They used to sit at the piano and play and watch the film, and then write out where things were in the score. So just see if you can manage that. Should we create a master track and then make it an audio file, then put it together with the video? No. So you did it sort of backwards, from what I understand. Clearly, I haven't looked at it yet. I promise today, but I actually will get it to it in the morning. Just import the video into Pro Tools and have it match up with your track. You might have to adjust a few things here and there once everything is all together with your mix and everything. So the Pro Tools session should have a video in it, and your video should reside somewhere inside of your session folder so that when I open it up, it'll all pop up correctly.